Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, death slayers, peasants, vassals, minions, just like the good old days. I'm a useful idiot, welcome. And today I want to go to Afghanistan, kind of catching up on a few corners of the globe um, because we've been focusing in on the slaughter in East Ukraine and the slaughter in Gaza. But I assure you, there's slaughter going on all over the globe. And so we'll cover some of these other places where there's a slaughter going on. And one of those places is Afghanistan. But more importantly is an article that came out recently that had a number of summary statistics about the last decade plus occupation by the United States, which will continue well into the future. And these numbers tell a lot about what a massive failure the U.S. investment in Afghanistan has been. But primarily, if you look at the idea of nation building and trying to create some sort of a quasi-democracy in Afghanistan, complete failure, in fact, a complete failure of setting up any kind of country at all, a completely failed state with a corrupt government, warlords that still run the country, a massive narcotics, opium industry, and I think probably one of the most corrupt governments on earth, as a matter of fact. And this is borne out by stories that I covered earlier about just huge bags of millions of dollars being set in front of people's doors. That ludicrous arrangement. But if you want to set up a country, of course, the U.S. effort there failed. But if you want to set up a colony, the U.S. effort there has been very successful indeed. And going into the future, we're going to see a U.S. presence there for the foreseeable future. And even if every last U.S. soldier leaves, we're still going to have a massive private contractor, mercenary, CIA presence there that will maintain this colony. And I can safely call it a colony because one of the statistics in this report is that 80% of the country is still out of the control of the U.S. So the Taliban, the warlords who are playing both sides of the fence, basically run the whole country, and at night the entire country reverts to the control of the Taliban. And realistically, the only part of the country of the U.S. really has any control or presence in, and not even that, is Kabul, with some notable outposts. So there's going to be this main compound at Bagram, torture chamber / fortress, that will be a center for U.S. presence there for years and decades to come, I would suspect. And part of this is for the forward base presence against Russia and China that Afghanistan affords, but also the extraction of a massive amount of minerals and resources there. And the United States and most elites like to use failed states with native armies and corrupt governments in order to facilitate this resource extraction, because they can really get a good deal. Now, let's look at some of these other figures. So the United States has invested $93 billion in Afghanistan, the civil government there, since 2002, and the U.S. funds 60% of the Afghan national budget. So U.S. taxpayers are paying for 60% of an Afghan national budget, and I would imagine 59% out of that 60% goes right in the pockets of 100 powerful people in Afghanistan, including the Karzai family and warlords and the like, money greasing the wheels. And then we have U.S. military action since 2002 has cost $500 billion. So $600 billion propping up their public government and investing in our military actions there. And then we subtract all the hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars of equipment that we're just going to trash and leave there as well. And then the U.S. has promised to pledge to fund this Afghanistan government at 60% for the next 10 years. So we're on the hook for that. So they're going to be milking us dry and living fat and happy in places like Monaco. When the Karzai family moves, they're no longer welcome there. And then, like I say, there's massive corruption. This is all documented. They squirreled away and put it into private accounts, pallets of money being flown in. And The U.S. even did their own studies if that was necessary, and they verified that the corruption there is so bad that it threatens the stability of the state. So big shocker there. And then one of the big surprises, of course, the U.S. military is trapped in a warlord protection racket. In other words, as long as they keep paying the warlords, there's a certain amount of stability there, and they will cooperate to a certain degree with the U.S. forces. But they're also playing the other side of the fence and working with the Taliban as well, and that's pretty well documented as well. And we see the same problem, the results of that, in Iraq today, as the United States used to pay off Sunni tribes in order to get their loyalty, and then once the money dried up, they weren't interested anymore in being loyal. So another big shocker there. And then we find out that $7.6 billion has been spent on anti-narcotics since 2002 in Afghanistan, and now we have opium production at record levels. And let me remind you that opium production was almost eradicated in Afghanistan under the Taliban. Now it's sprung back to record levels, and the United States really had no choice. I would imagine the $7.6 billion was actually investment in the opium industry and not spent to eradicate it. And we have evidence of U.S. troops guarding those fields. They're well aware of it. It's a great way to get loyalty of tribes and warlords by sustaining agricultural product that they can actually make some money from. And so we have a narcotics hotbed there. This industry maintained by the CIA as well, as we all know. And we have $3 billion spent on the Afghan police, which includes 54,000 ghost members, and those are members of the Afghan police that get paid but never show up for work. And we have that same problem in Iraq, of course, and this is one of the footprints that the United States leaves in these failed operations like there and in Libya too. And then, one of our favorite ones is 43%, this is a separate story, 43% of 747,000 firearms sent to Afghanistan are missing. So somewhere around 300,000 of all those firearms are missing. The cost is $626 million. And so here we go again with the United States, flooding these theaters all over North Africa, all over the Middle East, all over Afghanistan, and then wondering why the militants can maintain these offensives and arm themselves so much better, and that these weapons end up spreading all over the globe. One might even think that was part of the plan, to sustain multiple regional wars and arm these insurgents all over the place so they can maintain these small regional wars to justify the military-industrial complex going into the 21st century. But I'm going off on a tangent. So then, not to mention everything else I've talked about in Afghanistan from these figures, let's remember also that 2,365 U.S. servicemen have been killed there, 18,230 U.S. servicemen wounded in Afghanistan, including 724 amputations, as well as a rough estimate of 21,000 Afghan civilians killed. So that's the government estimate of Afghan civilians killed with 21,000. We can pretty much say realistically it's 10 times that. So let's say 200,000 Afghan civilians killed, and that's probably more accurate. So we total all these numbers up, and we look at what the United States has achieved there, and it appears to be absolutely nothing unless this is by design. And in that case, we have a perfect proxy in Afghanistan. It is a colony. It's run like a colony. There's a corrupt colonial, neo-colonial government propagated by the American empire with a native ruler, puppet ruler, a native puppet army who does the bidding of its masters to some degree in this country that is barely under anyone's control. A failed state, a colony, and the United States is going to be there for a long, long, long time. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too?